Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to ESI's webinar on succession planning. I'm going to apologize a little bit for my voice. It's a little rough. I've done about 6 nights of speaking in the last 7 days, so it's been a pretty hectic schedule here. But this is something that we don't give enough thought to, and that's the succession of our business and also our personal life either. Most of us have spent a great deal of time and a great deal of effort building our businesses, giving something back to our community, giving our family a livelihood. Sometimes we're building a business that our children are going to take over. And the one thing we forget about is that if we don't have it properly structured and we don't have the plan in place, we may actually be creating a huge financial nightmare for our spouses and our children. So it's absolutely something we want to take a look at and see if we can make this the least amount of interruption as possible if something was to happen to us. And the unfortunate side of this is things happen. We have, in the last 4 or 5 years, actually had several shop owners very suddenly pass away. And we've seen firsthand kind of the devastation that happens when we don't have a plan in place of succession, or we don't have the policies and insurances in place that we need to, and we don't have our wills and trust in the correct order. So we're going to talk today a little bit about the business side of it, but I highly recommend that you get yourself into an attorney who's a succession planner or an estate planner, and you get started on your living trust, your wills that are necessary, your durable power of attorney, and your health directive. Some of you may know that 4 or 5 years ago, my mother passed away, and we did not have all these documents in place, and it was a very expensive and very long 3.5 years, pretty agonizing journey to take care of her estate, and it was not anything of great value. So even if you have just a few things or you don't think you have a lot, you need to talk to an attorney and make sure you talk to somebody who's very clear about estate planning. So let's talk about the succession planning for ourselves and the future of our business. Most of us in the small business world, and it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, haven't really given a lot of thought to what happens if I'm not here. And whether that be because of what I consider to be a catastrophic failure, which would be serious injury or death, or whether it's I don't want to be here anymore. I put my 30, 35, 40 years in my business, and I want to go sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais. We need to have a plan in place to make this happen. Most of us have never done any planning whatsoever. Succession is the act or process of following in an order or sequence. So ideally what we have here is a company. Now, some of you may have gotten the company either through purchase or just taken it over from your parents. And you didn't just basically stepped in and took over. But here's our problem. In a lot of cases, we don't have anybody that's going to do that for our business. A lot of our children don't want to take the business over. They've gone out and done other things. They're computer programmers. They're doing other things. And we need to have a sequence or a process in place if we were to not be able to go to work. And again, it could be a serious illness. It could be death. It could be I'm just tired and I want to retire. And we absolutely have to prepare our business for the loss of leadership. Think about your business and what would happen if you, as the owner, could not go to work tomorrow. Or you couldn't go to work for 6 months. Or you couldn't go to work for the rest of your life for whatever reason. Is there a process or a plan in place? Who's the next person in charge? Do you have people trained to take over? Are you ready for somebody else to run your business? And I'd have to say in about 99% of the businesses that I've seen in all makes and models, I mean, it doesn't matter just automotive repair, they don't have this plan in place. I've actually been at shops where, fortunately, it wasn't catastrophic, but the owner had, in one case, an appendicitis, and he couldn't go to work. Well, I was asked to show up and see what I could do. We did not even have, unfortunately, the codes to get in the computer. We could not log on to the shop management system because nobody there, including his wife, do not have access to the computer system. That stuff needs to be written down. You need to have a book that has all this pertinent information in it, locked up under lock and key. Now, we have what we call a shop information package, which is, gosh, I think it's 30, 35 pages long, of information that we'd like to have in case we ever have to show up and run your business. And if you'd like that, if you just shoot me an email when you get this webinar, I will send it to you. And what I recommend you do is you fill it out, you make some copies of it, you leave one at the shop, you might give one to your spouse, you might give one to somebody else or whoever its succession plan is, whoever would take your place, so that they have some of this information. And by the way, it's going to need to be updated on a pretty regular basis. So if you'd like that, just shoot me an email at Maylan, M-A-Y-L-A-N, at esiseminars.com and say you want the shop plan, and I'll send you that document so you can do that. We need to have succession in the shop. If you don't go to work, if you can't go, who's going to take your place? That's one of the very first things we need to figure out. We also need to have in place, let me get my slide to advance here, a responsible planning for the unexpected. What's going to happen? Now, there's lots of things that we need to be concerned with to maintain this business and grow it. Very first thing is catastrophic failure of the structure of the business. Earthquake, fire, flood, tornado, hurricane. We need to have a plan in place for how to handle that. Notifications, equipment lists, serial numbers, costs, those kind of things. And we also need to have planning for the personnel issues. Some of us may have a service advisor or a manager or a center manager, and we want to make sure that if something happens to them, we can function. If you have a manager and you're not there every day, you need to have some kind of follow-up plan. Can you be there? If not, who else in the shop can run the shop till you get there and straighten things out? Now, there are policies to help you with what we call key man. That's the insurance term for it, a key man policy. So if you have somebody that's very, very instrumental in the success of your business, you can actually insure them, which will allow you to have some cash flow if they're not going to be there. There's a failure. That's certainly something you need to talk to your insurance person about. But unfortunately, most of us don't like to talk about the bad stuff, so we don't do this. And I want you to start planning. This is something I think everybody should have a binder with this information in, so we know what we need to do to move the company ahead. We need leadership development for the younger generation. I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes how ancient we've become as owners. But we need to start building a youthful following and develop this younger generation into the management and the skill set that we need them to have. You have to remember that the young kids of today think differently than we do. There are some absolutely outstanding young people out there. They do things differently than we do. They think about things differently than we do, but it doesn't mean they're not going to be successful or that they can't do what needs to be done. They just may not do it the way you want. So we need to start teaching and sharing some of our skill set, some of our experience with our leadership development. You need to find somebody in your shop and start grooming them to be the next generation of leaders. I spoke this particular weekend at an association, and that's one of the things I told them. You need to be recruiting and training your replacements. So if you're on the board of directors, you need to train your replacement to take your place when you go off the board. And I think as an owner of a shop, you need to be doing the same thing. I don't mean you got to leave tomorrow, but what I'm saying is you need to start planning for the future. You need to start bringing younger folk into the business and then get them involved in what's going on in the business. I think most of us don't think about that, and it's a high, high, high priority. Oops, I'm sorry, we went too far. Let me back this up one. And then we want to make sure there's a smooth transition of control. Here's one of the things that happens in a lot of cases. You, the shop owner, have been there for a long period of time. You're taking care of the customers. They know you. They know your name. They know everything about you. Some of them have 20-year relationships with you. Something happens to you. We bring somebody in. We have to hire somebody. They don't know them. We're going to lose customers. We lose trust because they don't know them. So we want to make sure there's a smooth transition of control. That's why it's so important to plan for this. We want to have somebody that can step up there and kind of take your place, if that's the right word for it, to show the customers, hey, I've been here a long time too, the boss trusts me. Let me introduce you to somebody who's helping us out. So the trust doesn't get lost. One of the biggest things we have is when you guys aren't there, people may not have us do the work because they're going to wait for you to be there. When I was a temporary service writer for ESI, I'd be in a repair shop. People would actually come in, look at me, and ask, who are you? And I'd explain to them that I'm there taking over the shop for the week while the owner was on vacation. And it was my job to convince them that it was okay to leave the car, that they're not going to have a loss of customer care or service, or the car's not going to be repaired properly. Not many shops have that in position. We need to make sure that there's somebody else there that can be the front man, that the customers see and understand and know that they've been there a long time. So this smooth transition of control is, I don't want to lose business or customers. And it happens. I once wrote service at a repair shop, and the guy told everybody he was going on vacation. Nobody came in. They postponed the work until the boss was back, for whatever reason. Your business can't survive. If you can't be there, we want to make sure at least your customers are getting the same level of customer service and they're getting the friendly, smiling faces. Even if it's a stranger that actually writes them up and calls them on the phone, if somebody they know is from the shop is there, it'll be a lot better transition, and they'll be a little bit happier about the process. Why should we have succession planning? We want to plan the future direction of the company. This is something that I really think that we don't put enough thought into. You know, last month we had our planning and goals class, and you know, it's one of those classes that people know they need, but they don't want to go to because now we got to actually sit down and think about this. But I want you to have, not only as we talked about last month in the planning class, which is available in webinar also, but we want to make sure that we're not just looking at next year, 2011 in this case. We want to make sure that we're looking at next year, 5 years, and 10 years. The idea is we have action plans in place next year, but we have a 5-year goal. Where do we want to be in 5 years? We have a 10-year goal. Where do we want to be in 10 years? And part of this future direction of the company is starting the process of finding your replacement. Again, does not mean you have to leave the company. It means we need to start looking for somebody who can take over control of that company. We'll talk about that a little more in a bit. But the reality is that we're going to have somebody who can do our job. And as an owner, that's really what I should be striving for. Here's the perfect company in my mind, and again, it doesn't matter what industry it is I don't have to go to work to make it function. That there's a crew in place, empowered, trained, doing their job, that allows me to come and go out of the business seamlessly. They'll never know whether I'm in or out of the business. That is what we're striving for. You can go to work every day, I don't care. But if you want to go on vacation, we should never see a decrease in car count, customer service, dollars and cents, because they waited for you to get back. This future direction of the company is also, what are we going to be in that 5 years or 10 years? If you sat down right now and I ask you that question, where do you see your shop in 5 years? You need to articulate that on a piece of paper. And then where do I see your business, or where do you see your business in 10 years? And I'm talking about visualizing this business, what it looks like, what it sounds like, the personnel that are in it, how much money we're doing in sales, the whole picture. Because if you don't have that picture, we're not going to have a great direction for the company. We're going to take that path of least resistance, and we're just going to kind of go with the flow. Most of us are so busy taking care of today, of fixing today's cars and stomping on today's fires, we don't ever think far enough into the future. And that's really part of our ownership. This is succession. Where are we going to be? Now, in 10 years, you might say, I want to be retired. Great. Who do we need to run the business? What are we going to do with the business when I retire? And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I want you to have this plan. I want 2 or 3 action plans for next year, as we talked about planning and goals. But I do want to see a one-page vision of where you see your company in 5 years and a one-page vision of where you see your company in 10 years. This is the starting point for us having a business that we can come and go from as we please. And I think that's really what most of us wanted. We need to provide a training plan for future leaders. Maybe you have a young man, a young woman who's a very good technician, but they've expressed the desire that they may want to own their own business, or that they don't want to be a wrench their whole life. Now is the time to get that person in some management training. Now is the time to get that person trained to be a business person. Because the more they know about your business, the better they can help you. The more they know about your business, the easier it is to pass some controls over to them. But we need to have a plan for this. We need to have clear-cut, written down expectations for them so they're not wandering around wondering what's going on. It's very important that if we have the key people in our business, the people we want to keep, that we find a way of tying them into the company. So we want to have a training plan for these future leaders. If you do not have the future leader right now, you need to go find the future leader. And I'm a very firm believer, and we should not be hiring people. We should be recruiting year-round. And we should be looking for, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a cold, callous business statement here, we should always be looking to replace our weakest link, which means if somebody walks through the door that has a skill set that I need and it's better than anybody's skill set I have, I want to hire that person. That person may never come through my door again. I'm going to get rid of my weakest link. There's always somebody, as I call it, with their foot out the door. And we need to be thinking of the business. So if you don't have the future leaders, you need to start writing down what that future leader looks like, sounds like, smells like. Have a plan to get that person into your company, because if you don't plan for the future, your leaders won't be there. We want to ensure continuity. This is really an important thing that, you know, anytime you change a service writer, for example, you lose a little bit. Now, some customers are glad they're gone and some customers are sad they're gone, but you'll lose a little bit. So the better job you do of planning this and having people in place, the better the continuity will be. And we want this business to continue, like I said, whether you're in it or not. The best business in the world is one that nobody actually knows who the owner is. They might think your service advisor is the owner. They might think the technician's the owner. You don't need to be up there saying, I'm the owner, I'm everything, because your business is not going to be as valuable if you do that. So what we want to do is we want to have a continuation plan. Everybody knows what's going on. We have a plan. So if you can't go to work, somebody can step in and take your job. Somebody steps in and takes their job. Somebody steps in and takes that person's job. You may actually have to hire somebody, but I'd rather hire at the lower end of that scale than the higher end of that scale. And of course, with great succession planning and the proper process, you can actually reduce your taxes. This is a huge deal. To go through probate, to pay inheritance tax, it's a lot of money. In our Northern California classes where we did this live, we actually have an attorney come in and talk to us. And this is where every state's a little different. You need to definitely have a good attorney help you with these plans on some levels. But we want to reduce the tax liability. I'm all for the government and I'm all for paying them, but only what they deserve. I don't want to pay them a penny more than they absolutely should get. One of the things the tax attorney told us this week was there are some taxes that become due upon death that can be as high as 55%. So we want to try to minimize our tax issues. So part of the succession plan, in addition to direction of the company, the future leaders, ensuring continuity, we want to reduce the taxes because that can break a company. Your company gets hit with a $100,000 tax bill. If you were to pass away, it may not survive that tax hit. So we want to make sure that we do everything in our power to facilitate the lowest possible tax liability. This plan will provide peace of mind. And I'm going to be a little bit sexist here. Probably 90% of the repair shop owners are male, and they have wives, spouses, who don't always work in a business. And they're scared because they realize if you, as the shop owner, lead technician, chief bottle washer, can't work, their income's going to suffer. Now, I know some of you have a wife that allows you to just kind of have a hobby there in the repair shop, but that's not a lot of us. The rest of us, this thing is our lifeblood. It's our family's lifeblood, so it's very important for us to get this thing handled so that if something was to happen to you, we could continue on and provide for your family. This peace of mind, it should make you feel better when you have this plan in place. It should make your spouse feel better, because now if something was to happen, one of the things that we tell our clients that we work with is that part of this peace of mind is if you can't go to work and you're a client of ours, we should be the second phone call to let us know what happened. There's been on a couple of occasions where we have scrambled to fill a position in a shop, service writing typically, because that's usually what the owner does, who got sick or died, and we've actually had to fill that position till we could do something because they had no plan. Now, not my favorite thing to do is drive all night to open a shop in the morning, but I've done it. And this is part of this peace of mind. Your spouse is already dealing with problems. She should not have to go, or he should not have to go to the shop and go, I don't know what to do. I'm not a person who's done this before. We provide that for our clients. But I want you to think about, what can I do to make my family's mind secure? So having a plan, having the right people involved in this, we're going to talk about that in a minute, having the right insurance policies, having the right trust, will and trust, all of those things are going to help your family cope with this. Some of the other things that provide peace of mind is actually sitting down and talking about these things. Part of a good succession plan is that health directive. Tell them what you want. Tell them how you want to be treated, how you want to be made comfortable, or if you want to be on a respirator. There's all these things that we don't like to talk about that are very important. And in a time of stress like this, if it's not done properly, they won't do anything until it's sorted out by the courts. And we don't want that. We want this to be as quick and easy as possible. Definitely provide security to the family. Now, most of the ladies that I talk to that husbands are in the automotive repair industry, their form of security is money in the bank. Their form of security is insurance policies, so that something does happen, they're not left stranded with no income. So keep that in mind, gentlemen, that security to your wife or your spouse is very typically having some backup. So we talk about it in financial structuring of putting a certain percentage of money away every payday or every week so that you have some security. It's investments. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes, about the team needed to do this. But provide security for your family. Just because you like to go to work and you think you're invincible does not mean you are. I want you guys to have some security for that family. The average age of a repair shop owner is 53 years old. This is actually the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association did a survey, and they found that the average shop owner is 53 years old. Now, we have some youth coming in, but it's going to take a while for that average to change. Let me see here. They've been in business for about 28 years. So pretty much over half their life, they've been in business in the automotive industry. What does this tell us? Well, they're 53 years old. They're older. They've been in business a long time. Burnout is very, very rampant in our business right now because of these two items. But here's the worst thing about this. Time they spent planning for the future, 0 years. Because we don't want to think about it. I remember being 17, 18, 19 years old and I'm, man, 30, that's a lifetime away from here. And then it was 30 was here. And then 40 came even faster, and 50 came even faster. You're running out of time to do this. You're running out of time to put this plan in place. Now, here's the other factor we have to worry about, because most of us are in poor health. We have bad knees, bad backs, bad shoulders, eyesight, high blood pressure, not because of the stress of owning a business, of course. A lot of shop owners are overweight. So we're in poor health. We got pretty much the trifecta of leaving our family stranded. So we want to work on all of these items and have it in place. We don't plan for today, much less the future. In fact, most of us are so worried about getting the cars fixed that are in the shop today, we do not give any consideration to next week, next month, next year, or down the road. So we want to start thinking about something other than today. That is your job as the owner. It's your job to have the strategic plan. It's your job to bring it to the shop and modify it and change it and make it grow the way it's supposed to. And here's the other problem. We keep most of the business information in our head. So let's say that we did have a catastrophic failure, and we're not going to kill you off. We're just going to put you in the hospital. In fact, let me tell you a true story. I received a phone call about one of our previous clients. We call them alumni, been in the program for a while, had an appendix burst. Now, that's a very serious thing to have happen. They're very worried about infection in that case. And I was asked to show up at the shop on Monday morning. I showed up at the shop on Monday morning, and I had a gentleman unloading a toolbox, a brand new employee starting. I had a technician who had been there exactly 1 week, 5 work days. It's a two-man shop. Both of these employees were brand new. I had a wife, a brother, and about 15 friends helping us. Excuse me. So you can imagine total chaos. So I took the wife aside and I said, look, we can get the shop open, we can take care of the customers, we can take care of the cars, but I need all these people to go home. And if you could get everybody to go, I need you to stay for a little while. Let me get these 2 technicians out of the way, and then you and I can talk about a game plan. So remember, 1 technician there 5 days, a brand new technician, and the wife. So we get rid of everybody else. I really appreciated them wanting to help, but chaos reigned. We have a Cadillac down to the time and chain. We have a Chevy truck with the vacuum motors out of the heating air conditioning system and the dashboard apart on it. And we had another car tore apart. I don't remember what it was. All of which the owner did because he had this new technician last week and new one starting today. But here's the kicker. So we get inside, shop computer's turned off, I turn it on, it needs a password to get into it. She doesn't have the password. In fact, she doesn't have anything that we need to run the business because she wasn't involved in the business, even in the smallest way. So we had to wait for him to come out of anesthesia to be able to log in the computer system, which was later that day. We were able to fix the cars, take care of the customers, and do all the things we needed to do, but it was twice as hard and took twice as long because nobody even knew who to order parts from. They had no idea who had accounts, who didn't. I was going through filing cabinets looking for bills. This is the kind of stuff that should not be in your head. It needs to be written down. Simple things that you take for granted that if I show up or one of my employees show up to take care of your business need to know. For example, what about processing your credit cards? Do you need to batch the machine or not? Some machines are automatic and some aren't. What credit cards do you take? What's the cross streets? If I have to give directions to your business and I've actually been there for a whole hour, I may not know. I need the cross streets. Who do you bank with? Who's your insurance person? What part stores do you use? What vendors? What dealerships? Who do you have accounts with? I was in a shop and there were 6 employees and none of them knew the machine shop that did their machine work. We had no checks and no cash, so I had to find the shop that had the ability to charge to. I had to go through the phone book, machine shop by machine shop, and asking a very silly question. Do we have a charge account with you? So these things happen. So I want you to get all that information out of your head, and I want you to put it in a book. I want you to put it in one book, like I said, in multiple areas. And if you want our version of that, our starting point for you, and I guarantee you we have not thought of everything, I'll send that to you. Just shoot me an email. But you got to get that information out of your head to where other people can use it. Way too much of this stuff depends on your gray matter, and we're never going to be successful that way. If you haven't already done it, I highly recommend you read your E-Myth Revisited because they talk about building a business that's repeatable, basically the idea of a franchise. So you have step-by-step process for everything you can do. Now, I understand you can't step-by-step process car repair in some cases because it's too variable. But that process of closing the books at the end of the day, doing payroll, In our class we did last week, I asked one of the gentlemen, I said, okay, your wife can't come to work for a month. She's incapacitated. Can you do payroll? And he looked at me, and his wife works full-time with him. He looks at me and goes, okay, yeah, I think I could do it. I've done it one time. I said, great. How many hours will it take you to do it? He said, well, it might take me all day because I'm really going to have to think about it, and it's probably trial and error. And I said, what about your other job? You're the service writer, right? He goes, well, yeah. And I said, are you going to be able to write service and do payroll? He goes, well, I'll probably have to do payroll after the shop closes. And you see the problem here? If we had a step-by-step, I could hire almost anybody to follow A, B, C, D, E, F, and have them do payroll. So I don't have to take away from one job to do another job. So start getting this information, not just your shop owner mentality stuff, but if you have a bookkeeper who does payroll or files or closes the end of the day, that should be a written process, and you should be able to hand it to anybody, and they should be able to follow that process and do it just like that person. So if you don't have that, you need to start on that. For those of you that are in a family business, only 30% of the family business survived to the second generation. I know a lot of kids that are working in their parents' business and don't want to be there. They're only doing it to not disappoint mom and dad. But think of this, only 30% of those businesses will survive through the second generation. Only 30%, of the 30%, only half will make it to the third generation. So a lot of us are not going to have a third or fourth generation in our businesses. Most of us think the business will fund retirement. I have to tell you, and we're going to talk a little more about it in a minute, that if you think your business is going to provide you retirement and it's going to be your sole retirement, you're probably going to be very disappointed for a variety of reasons. And I'll tell you a couple of those in a minute. You need to have financial planning and have other retirement in place because most of us are not going to use our business to fund our retirement. It may help us, but it's certainly not going to be the only thing we have. This small business has not been structured correctly to allow for a profitable sale. This is a kicker. I've been involved in buying and selling repair shops, and I go in and I look. If the owner has to be there, he's an integral part of the operation, or she is, every day. If they're going to be the person that I talk to on the phone, write my car up, you know, just basically are the main person at that business, it loses about 50% of its value when I go to buy it or sell it. And here's why. Because that person is the spokesperson for the company, they're the face of the company. When I take the company over and that person leaves, I'm going to lose about 50% of my customer base right away. So let's say that you thought your business was worth $500,000. It's not going to be if you're the face that the customers come to see. Now, a business that has a service advisor that does not need you to be there every single day, that you can come and go and the customer's not really sure who owns the business, will get that extra money. So it's in your best interest to have a business you do not have to run, that you don't have to be there. I want you working in the business. No, I want you working on the business, not in the business. If you got to go be the service writer every day, that business loses value. If you can go and have somebody else run the shop, whether you're there or not, you're going to see a big difference in this. So keep this in mind because it's going to affect how you sell your business. The plan. You need to have a team of advisors. And I think this is some of the best advice that I was ever given, is that you cannot do this by yourself. You need to have people you trust involved in your business. And we're going to actually go over the 5 different people I think you need, and maybe even there's 6 of them. But a lot of folks don't do this because they're afraid of sharing information. They're afraid of what people think. Most of these people are professionals. No matter how good you are, they've seen better. No matter how bad you are, they've seen worse. But if you want to really be successful, you need other people helping you with some of these decisions. You need a business consultant or coach. You need to have somebody looking out your business from the outside. It's very easy to have a jaded look on your business when you only see what you see. You walk past things that everybody else notices, but you walk past them because it's just the way it is. And here's the other thing. Most of us haven't worked in a lot of places. At this association meeting of shop owners I was at this weekend, I actually went around a room of about 20 people and asked them, how many repair shops have you been in? I mean, owned it, worked in it, not visited it, but actually spent time in it. The biggest number was 8, but the vast majority were 1 or 2. So you have only your view of your business. And what a business consultant and coach can do can bring to you kind of the global picture of automotive repair, what other shops are doing, what's successful, what's not, what works, what doesn't. And they're going to see your business from a whole different perspective because they're not there every day. They don't walk by, step over this, walk around that. It's really important to have an outside set of eyes looking at your business, crunching the numbers. Now, perfect world, they come visit your shop so they actually see it. Next best world is they're involved in your day-to-day problem solving. They crunch the numbers. They talk to you on a regular basis, not just about the numbers, about what's going on, the problems you're having, the things you're dealing with. That's what a good business coach and consultant will do for you. You absolutely need to have a good attorney, and I'm not a big fan of them. I think they complicate the world, but unfortunately it's a complicated world, and we need them. And I feel you need 2 different attorneys. You need a business attorney. You need somebody that understands business, excuse me, that can help you with the business side of it. And then you need somebody who is a well-versed, an expert, if you will, in what I'm going to term succession planning. This is trust, wills, durable powers of attorney, healthcare directives, the things that will help you survive this catastrophic failure, injury, or death. And you need that succession planner to help you make sure that everything is done properly. Again, every state varies, so you need to find one. And this is a trust one. The business a lawyer, I want a shark. I want somebody who's just nobody likes because I think they need to be aggressive and pushy. My succession planner I got to get along with. I need to make sure that he or she fully understands what I do, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish. So you need really 2 attorneys. Now, you may find one that does both, but I think you need 2 different ones. You absolutely need a good accountant. And this accountant needs to work for you and not work for himself in the sense that he needs to do the numbers and the spreadsheets and your cash flow analysis to where it makes sense to you. They need to talk to you in normal terms also. Your accountant can be your tax guy. You may actually have somebody different do your taxes than your day-to-day accountant or your monthly accountant. But you need to have a good accountant. You need to sit down, in my opinion, with this accountant 4 times a year. They may crunch the numbers and send you the P&L and you just transfer information, but 4 times a year you should sit down with them or whoever's doing your tax planning and say, here's what we're projected to do. What are the ramifications? What do I need to be careful about? What do I need to look out for? I really get upset when a client tells me, hey, I saw the accountant here and it's December or January getting ready for the tax season, and he tells me that I made money and now I've got to have a $20,000 tax liability. We could have mitigated that tax liability through some good tax strategy earlier in the year had we known we were headed that direction. So make sure that your planning is done on a quarterly basis and the review is done. So you need a really good accountant. And again, this is somebody you need to trust, and you really need to have a good relationship with them. You need to have a financial advisor. This is somebody who's going to help you with your investments. I want you to put money away like I told you earlier, and I want you to invest some of that money. I want you to have some backup, if you will. I don't believe your accountant and your financial advisor should be the same people in most cases. They're doing 2 different things for you, and I want them looking out for your money in 2 different ways. If you already have your accountant doing your financial planning, that's great if you're happy with them. But you may also go out and interview a couple people, kind of show them what's done and ask their opinion of it. You want to make sure you maximize your return on your investment and minimize your tax liability. That's the key here. So you need to have somebody that's looking out for the growth of your money, not just your accounting process. So that's why I like to have 2 different people here. If you have 2 of them doing the same job, I understand, but just make sure you spot check that from time to time. And I truly believe you absolutely need to have an insurance expert. You need to have somebody who is going to not just renew your policies, but actually make sure that you're adequately covered. We've had several instances where they've had what they consider to be just outstanding insurance, and it has not done its job. There's things out there like key man insurance. We talked about that a little bit ago. Building replacement, leasehold improvements. There's a whole gamut of things that you need to be concerned with, and you can't possibly be an insurance expert. So I'd like for you to have somebody you trust. You should shop your insurances every year. Now, if you're using a broker, he's probably doing that. But just because he's been a good guy to you doesn't mean he's being aggressive in his search for policies and make sure your coverage. Your business value changes, you add a piece of equipment, you do something at the business, you need to make sure that you talk to your insurance guy. Again, I think probably insurance should be kind of a once a quarter, let's have a conversation, has anything changed? Well, you know, something has changed. I just bought this new alignment rack. I just invested $40,000 in this alignment rack. Well, we need to make sure that insurance will cover that. We also need to make sure that our employees are covered while they're driving either the company's cars or clients' cars. So don't scrimp on insurance. This is one of those things that, you know, you grumble till you need it, and then you want to have the best there is. So make sure that you don't grumble about this, that you do have a good quality insurance policy in place by an expert. The plan. You need to first start a review and assess the current employees. Sit down and write their strengths and weaknesses. A lot of you do not review your employees. You don't think about them until you're yelling at them. But you need to really sit down and say, okay, do I have the crew in place to move my company forward in the long run? Are they included in your 5-year vision and your 10-year vision? So assess the current employees. Develop process and procedures for the shop. Again, turnkey, follow this, you'll be okay. Can't necessarily do it to fix the cars, but the paperwork process, the write-up process, the payroll process, all of the things that are paperwork related that aren't necessarily about repairing cars. Now, there's a lot of things on the cars we can actually write a process and procedure with. But if you don't do this, when you're gone, we have no way of continuing this. And here's one of the things I want you to think about. All of you shop owners out there, you have actually created a business that has your philosophy of auto repair. If you want that philosophy to continue, and that's the way you want your customers treated and the cars treated and people treated, you had better write it down, because they're going to lose sight of your philosophy. And that's one of the key things. You look at any of the large franchises, the fast food companies, they have a process and procedure for everything because they want consistency in the product, consistency in delivery. So should you, whether you're there or not. So be very clear about the process and procedures for your shop. You need to cross-train your employees. I like to have as many people doing as many different jobs as possible. So it's kind of like a lot of the military positions where you have your major endeavor and then you have a minor in something else. So, you know, if you have a great diagnostician, maybe he needs to be cross-trained in alignments. Maybe you got a great alignment guy and he needs to be cross-trained in diagnosis. The thing is I want them to go to school, training, and then get OJT. I don't like having to try to train somebody that doesn't make the commitment to go to school. But every position should be cross-trained. You need to have somebody that can actually write service other than you, somebody properly trained to answer the telephone other than you. So cross-train all of your employees. And I don't like to cross-train in the middle of the summer when we're slamming cars and we're real busy. But I actually scheduled to do this in the winter months when we're a little bit slower, as opposed to trying to throw them in the heat of the battle. Start developing leadership and employees. One of the things that we did, we used to meet every week. And not long meetings, short meetings. But let's say that somebody said, hey, you know, Malin, we don't have the proper tool to do X, Y, Z. Well, in the past, what would happen is Malin would get out the stuff and he'd do the research and he'd decide which one to buy. But what I did was, when that person brought that up, I said, all right, then here's the deal. In 2 weeks, I want you to make a presentation to our meeting about the variables, how many different models there are, how many different tools there are to do that, some of the nuances, some of the differences, even schedule demos if you need to. But in 2 weeks, I want you to come to the table and bring to the group a recommendation for purchase. And then when they did that and went through their dog and pony show and told us all the differences, they had a discussion about which piece of equipment they needed, and we allowed them to decide which piece. We were there, certain guidelines, but we were there. What we were doing is developing the leadership mentality. Allow your employees to lead. You should always be looking to hire decision-making people, not followers. You want leaders. And I think sometimes we create followers out of good leaders because we don't allow them to grow. Ensure all the legal issues are handled. Your corporation's structured properly and you have not pierced the veil of corporations by doing things you're not allowed to do. Things like not having your annual meeting, commingling funds. There's several things at corporations. Make sure your LLC or LLP is properly handled. Make sure your trust is written properly, your will is written properly, your trust is funded properly. You need to make sure everything on the legal side of this is done. Make sure your board of directors, if you're a corporation, is correct, because these are the things that create problems for companies when they don't have this stuff together and something happens. Make sure your insurance coverage is correct. Not only is it correct, but everybody, the key personnel, know what that insurance coverage is. Something happens to you and we don't know that you have a certain insurance policy and our insurance guy isn't on top of things, we may need to actually initiate the phone calls or start the process. So make sure all your coverage is correct and don't skimp on that. By the way, I never want to buy insurance based on price only. I want you to buy insurance based on service. One of the things that I like to be able to do is call my insurance guy up and say, I had this happen, handle it. And he takes care of me. He may send me the forms, he may tell me what to do, but it's a lot better than me trying to do it myself. And I've had that experience where I've been on the road. I actually got rear-ended on an interstate in Northern California, and on the side of the road, I called my insurance guy and said, hey, this happened. I just want to make sure I've covered all the bases. And he was there for me. That's priceless. Don't be blind about it, but I want you to buy service. Make sure that you understand everything you're buying. If you sign a piece of contract paper, especially in insurance, and you don't read every word and ask your questions, that's foolish. So your job as the owner-manager in the succession plan is to make sure we've got the correct coverage and you understand what it is. Make sure your financial house is in order. Again, we have the correct people. We had an owner die, unfortunately, and I don't know why. He wasn't a client of ours. He was more of an acquaintance. Committed suicide in the shop, and the guys came in and found him. There was nobody, including his wife, that could sign checks. His wife didn't even know where he banked. So we really had a problem. That business did not survive because we could not do anything. So make sure your financial house is in order. The plan, recruit the needed employees. If you don't have the staff you need, go find them. Again, hard, callous world, recruit continuously, replace the weakest link till you have the crew. Don't think of this as personal. This is business. We need the best employees, and they don't come along very often. You know, I look at it this way. If I have a killer service writer, they're 1 in 10,000 people. So I want to make sure I take advantage of them. Document all the information on the business. Like I said, fill out stuff. Make sure we know who you deal with, who you buy from, who your accounts are with, so that if something happens, we can continue the business. You want to have regular meetings with the management team. I like to meet with the staff at least every other week. A lot of shops like the weekly meetings. Let the employees run the meetings. That gives them some leadership ability also. But I like to meet regularly. Now, the management team, that's going to be your coach, your lawyer, your financial planner, your accountant, your insurance person. We're going to meet with them on a regular basis. Your coach you might meet with weekly, but everybody else probably once a quarter, talk about things, make sure what's going on. Include your key personnel in some of those conversations. Plan to retain and reward key employees. If you want somebody to stay with you, that decision maker, that keeper, that key person, you need to have in place a plan that gives them a reason to stay with you. Now, there's lots of ways of doing that. If it's somebody who might be interested in buying the company, you can sell them, gift them a small portion of the company, or you can reward them with bonuses and incentives to keep them there. Don't forget the spouse if you're going to bonus and incentivize these people to get them to stay, because if she's happy, he's going to be happier. So reward your key employees. Emergency operation plan. If something happens to me, here's the things that should be done. Again, you know, this disaster plan, we've heard lots of talk about it, and we think, oh, well, that never happens to us. We've had 2 shops burn to the point where they couldn't function. We needed a plan for that. We get flooded from time to time. Hurricane Katrina was a valid point of that. There's tornadoes. There's all these things that go on. You need to have an emergency operation plan. What's going to happen? If the business can't open, if the business is damaged beyond repair, what are we going to do? What if contingencies? What if I don't show up today? What if we can't get to the building? It's flooded. What if? We want to sit down and think about those worst-case scenarios, and every geographic area of the country is a little different as to what they should worry about. California, we worry about the earth shaking more than anything, whereas the Midwest, it might be tornadoes. If it's down south, it might be flooding. Just sit down and think about these what-ifs. What happens? What happens if I go in the hospital and I'm in a coma? Can my business survive without me? Do I have somebody who can sign checks? Also, be very careful about who you give fiscal responsibility to your company. So keep that in mind also. Do I have the right people in place? Can I give them fiscal responsibility? Can I make sure that this is going to function the way it's supposed to? You need to have an exit plan. That's a future date in which current management will exit. It's just like it sounds. I'm leaving the building. Now, you need to have an exit plan. So this might be part of your 10-year plan. In 10 years, I want to exit the business. It does not mean you have to sell it or stop working in it. It's simply a date that says this is my plan. There are 4 main options for an exit plan. You can retain ownership and management control, which basically means you stay in the business as a day-to-day operator doing the day-to-day business things. That's one option. You can retain ownership but not management control, which means you own the business but somebody else is running it. Maybe it's a son, a son-in-law, a daughter, or it's somebody you hired to be the general manager who's just going to basically run the business and you're going to continue to own it. You can sell the business. That's always an option. But remember, if you're there every day, if you're the first guy there, retain ownership and management control, when you go to sell it, it's worth about half what it should be. So if you're planning in 10 years to sell the business, your 5 and 10-year plans need to include putting that place into self-sufficient mode where you don't have to be there. Excuse me. Or you can close it. Most of us don't want that option because we want to continue the legacy. And that's great. I just heard 2 weeks ago of a gentleman in Los Angeles who sold his business, and 2.5 years later, the guy called him up and says, I'm done. You can have it back. Here's the keys. So he sold it, but got the business back. Maybe because he carried all the paper, maybe because he didn't structure the contracts right. Lots of reasons why. I know a gentleman who was 70 years old with a handicapped wife in New York. They would take a motorhome trip around the United States. They'd been gone almost 2 years. They made it all the way to the East Coast, and they'd just been taking their time visiting friends and seeing everything. And after 2.5 years, he actually got the phone call that said, I'm done. If you want your business, you need to come back. Next Monday is my last day. Guy drove back all the way across the United States to find a business that had been closed for a week and had to take it over again because he needed the income from that business. So there's some sad tales out there. So these are really your 4 plans on the exit plan. Which one's the best one for you? I can't tell you. What you need to do is sit down and think about this. An exit plan says that at this date, I'm going to exercise one of these options. Now, if at that time you don't have somebody to sell it to or you're not ready to sell it, maybe you want to move to the retain ownership but not management control. Let somebody else run it. Keep an eye on it. There's lots of ways to do this. The idea is to have a finishing point. That means everything's done to where you can do one of these 4 items, and you have a plan about it. Before you make that exit plan, you need to have the right crew in place. You need to have the right process and procedures in place. You need to have decision-making personnel in place, and you need to be able to come and go as you please, and that company maintains its integrity and nobody knows you're gone. Does not mean you have to leave the business. We just pass operational control to others in some cases, and it definitely will make the business worth more money. And that's what we want. You know, you started this business, some of us 28 years ago, with the idea that this was going to provide financial freedom and actually time freedom for us. And in most cases it has not, because we're too busy working in the business and not on the business. So we need to get control of the company and get back to the idea that it's not going to wag us. You know, I refer to it like this. Sometimes the inmates are in charge of the asylum. The business is running you. You're not running the business. And part of a succession plan is planning to take control of the business, get back in control so you can either sell it, do something else with it, make it give you what it's supposed to give you as opposed to you giving it everything that you have. And I know it's difficult, but most of us, if we would have started this 28 years ago when we started our business, if we would have started it as a business instead of us fixing cars because that's what we like to do, we'd probably be a whole bunch better off right now. So this is why it's important for us to get started on this. Now, I'm going to take some questions here in just a minute, but first I want to tell you January 27th we're doing our Attitude Seminar, our webinar, and that'll be a great class. We actually did this in San Antonio last year for HRA, and it had great reviews. So we've added it to the schedule for next year. This is a good class for everybody to attend in your business. It's going to affect them. And again, if you sign up for this, you automatically get it on a webinar anyway. So keep your eyes open for the emails going out about the Attitude webinar. So, all right. Now, is there anybody that has a question? And you should have a box on the bottom, on the right-hand side, where you can ask questions. That's the easiest way. So if you have a question, just type it in there, and I'll say it out loud so everybody knows what's being said, and then we will we'll answer that question for you to the best of our ability. Sometimes you guys stump me, so any questions, we'll give you a second to do that. While you guys are thinking about it or typing, I want to bring up the fact that our website, our new website, now has our store on it, and it's working. So there are 14 webinars available. So if you missed any of the webinars, you want to go back and buy them, you can buy them through the website through a credit card. We have a fixed rate shipping of, I think it's $4.50. You can buy one. You can buy up to the total number. There are discounts for buying more than 6 or 10 or more. So there's some incentive to do that. And you can do all of that on the web. We'll get you the stuff out right away. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. So as always, if there are any questions and you want to continue this conversation, or you have some very specific things you may not want to ask in public, just go ahead and give me a call at the 866-526-3039 number, or my email, which is Maylan, M-A-Y-L-A-N, at esiseminars.com, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. So I want to take this moment to say thank you very much for your loyalty this year, obviously, of attending the webinars and the classes and such, and for trusting ESI and all of us to help you with your businesses. It means a lot to us. We try very hard to make sure that you guys are getting the very best service possible. If there's anything that ESI can do to help you, please give us a call. Just call that 866 number. I'd be more than happy to work with you and talk with you. Other than that, I appreciate you being here today. Go out and sell some things. Have a great holiday season. Be very careful. Enjoy your time with your family. And we'll talk to you next year. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon. Bye.